Okay, red teamers? I don't identify with colors because I'm asked to do absolutely everything in my organization. There we go, those are my people. So, welcome to this talk. We're going to talk today about a very highly fictitious, definitely never happened story about a destruction of a business caused by what looked to be a ransomware, ended up being a little bit more complicated than that. But yeah, we're just going to roll into it. If you have any seeing problems or anything, go download this slide deck. If you can't see far in the back, I got a couple eye charts up here. I apologize, but feel free to download the slides. Feel free to take pictures, record, anything. They're all posted already. It's going to be up on Adrian's site, Iron Geek. If you guys haven't been there already, check it out. There's tons of talks out there. So, as I mentioned, can't walk through there. These are real-life situations. We're talking about small businesses, schools, charities, basically any business that has underfunded IT. I think we've all been there at least once in our career if we're not there already. If we have underfunded IT, chances are we have non-existent security. And just to drive this point home a little bit, anybody involved in NotPetya 2017? Yeah, it was terrible. White House has estimated about $10 billion of impact from that single breach. Anybody on the Twitter follow VF email? They were very transparent about one of their breaches. So if you're reading through this, basically the attacker got full control of their environment and just started writing out zeros to everything that they had. We're talking about backups, we're talking about production systems. They weren't able to recover most of their clients' emails. Just recently in the news, anybody know this 1907-08? It's RDP unauthenticated. So these things actually happen. I don't know how to drive home that point more. Breaches happen. If you haven't been breached, you probably just don't know about it. So again, very hypothetical situation because I'm most likely under NDA for most of these stories. So you get a message from your boss. Hey, take a look at the network. Some stuff isn't working. You log onto a server. See something like that? Maybe it looks like that one. Anyone see this one before? We haven't worked together before, have we? Some cases you just see this. So what do? We look for the incident response playbook. Now remember, underfunded IT. Incident response, yeah, we know it's important. We just haven't got around to it yet. We should have one, but we don't. All right, cool. Disaster recovery. You got a playbook? Oh yeah, we did that a whole bunch of times. Yeah, Jim, 5 years ago, he ran a wonderful test. He brought up the business in some other location. Excellent. Where's the binder? Well, we don't have a binder. Okay, cool. Can you tell me where Jim is? Well, Jim retired 4 years ago. Wonderful. We got any system documentation? Does anybody know how these systems were built? Well, we usually use integrators and we have outsourcers. We come in and then Jim runs them. Like, well, great, Jim's gone, guys. So here we go. So, yeah, again, in these situations, I've been part of multiple. The story's the same across everything. So, attacker landed and he just wiped everything, right? So we're at scorched earth. We have nothing. DRP, maybe it exists on the file share. That is also gone. So we got to remember a few things first before we start. Stole a few quotes from our armed forces. First one is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. We don't have times to screw up here. So, does anybody know how long their business can stay down before they declare bankruptcy? Anybody? Yes? 3 days. Wonderful. All right, for everybody else that doesn't know, use 2 weeks as a barometer. Why 2 weeks? Oh, you guys are quiet. There's coffee outside. Yes? Paychecks, exactly. Employees get paid every 2 weeks. If you're not paying your employees, it's really hard to run a business because those employees leave quickly, right? Second point here is, this is going to be awful. I'm not gonna lie. This is some of the worst experiences I've ever had in my life. But the bright side, you get to come to conferences and talk about your terrible experiences. So the very first thing that we need to do, chances are if we're in this situation, we don't have a dedicated incident response team. Go engage one. Now here's a tip that I learned. Have your legal counsel engage the incident response team. Now, I'm not a lawyer, I don't pretend to be even, but there's some legalities here. If your legal counsel engages the incident response team instead of IT, various things are not discoverable in court, because chances are you're going to court at some point related to this incident. So have your legal people involved from the very beginning. Quick story. So had a breach, everything's gone, backups are gone. And about 3 years later, we got subpoenaed to court for some email systems from 6 years ago. Because statute of limitations, 7 years, they can call that back. Well, we don't have those. However, since we had legal counsel, incident response teams, evidence, we had the law enforcement involved, it was dismissible in court because we literally didn't have them. We had due diligence, and we just didn't have the emails, so we didn't get penalized for that. So, we have legal engaged, we're breathing, we've already accepted our life sucks. What do? So we basically have a dying patient on our hands. So we need to ask ourselves a few questions. What do we know? How do we stop this from getting worse? And how do we make sure we don't screw it up even more? So, now, if I've worked for you before, this is not your environment. Everybody thinks they have a snowflake environment. Everybody's environment looks the exact same. There's some legacy Windows. There's some clients. There's this really dusty machine over there. It says IBM on it. It's either an AS400 or mainframe. I don't care what it is. But you got some stuff in the cloud because cloud is cool. Cloud is sexy. But we just can't figure out how to migrate this one machine over there. So, it's an XP box. It's sitting there. Sorry. Then we got the internet. So where do we sit now? Well, we know everything is impacted here. The IBM stuff, it's still chugging. We're seeing some C2 traffic leave the server environment. We're seeing it on the client environment. We're starting to see machines disappear off the network. If you've ever worked a ransomware case, if you're in the office and you can see all your computers, you just see screens start going black left and right. And people are kind of looking up and around. So as clients are coming online, they're coming right back offline. So some of them are infected. Person on vacation for 2 weeks, not infected yet. So, interactive time. What do we do? Turn things off. All right. Hibernate. Print resumes. That is the #1 response that I usually hear. Problem is, it was on your shared file that is also encrypted. Isolate nodes. Excellent. How are we doing that?
Network isolation.
Network isolation. Start turning off your routing, right? What else we got? Oh, you guys are really quiet. Again, coffee. The Monster people are also out there. If you don't like coffee, there's Monster. All right, I've also heard cry. But, so here's a couple ideas, right? We can disconnect the internet. We can disconnect in between routing, right? We can disable users. At this point, we're not sure exactly what happened. Let's disable everybody. Can we disconnect the cloud? Because the cloud looks okay. Do we want to power down the IBM stuff? I mean, that's usually where the data is. Let's make sure that that's okay. All right, you're going to list out all these different things that we could possibly do. And then we're going to talk about the negatives of doing it. So if we disconnect the ERP systems, we have no business transactions. We're dead in the water, right? If we power down the Windows systems and leave the IBM systems up, well, chances are we got a SQL database on the Windows side and we got a DB2 database on the IBM side. Have you tested your rollback capabilities there? Is there transactional integrity? Are we going to corrupt everything here? If we want to find the malware, that might work. Might take some time. So we have to really understand quickly on what actions we have and what the impact of that is, and then decide to go. Most of the times, this is what we do. We disable the routing in between the environments. We're disabling domain accounts. At this point, we assume they have domain admin already. We can't trust any of our users. Because you disabled their accounts, send the people home. And the little tangent on this is control the rumor mill. I can't tell you how many times that I hear employees over in accounting say, oh my goodness, there was this man, he looked Russian in here last week. I bet you that was the hacker. It's like, no, you've been compromised for 700 days already. Like, the guy's long gone. Then go to management, go to your board, have them go figure out business continuity, because you're going to have to figure out how to run your business without systems. Because at this point, we are down, right? We've taken down the business. This is a big deal. So step 2, we got to assess situation and plan. Again, quickly, we don't have time for screw-ups. So, got to know what's broken, got to know how bad it's broken, and we need to fix it, and we need to know what to fix first. So, be very, very careful with your phrasing of this. What's broken is very obvious to us. We need to know what's broken so we know what to fix. But if you ask this to anybody outside of our field, these are the answers you get. This is what they look like. All right? So, rephrase it a little. What do we need to do to stay in business? This is your business cycle planning. Most businesses, it's very simple. You're going to take orders, you're going to make products, you're going to ship the products, you're going to pay your bills, and you're going to collect money. Great. What do we need to do these things? Again, be careful with your phrasing, who you're dealing with, because they're like, well, we need all of our systems back. It's like, oh, no. We only need a few systems, but what are those systems? So red teamers in the room, we're basically on a black box pen test now. We need to figure out how to rebuild Humpty Dumpty. Go find whatever you can and take everything with a little bit of grain of salt. You're not sure what systems are compromised at this point. You're not sure if those systems are actually legitimate. We don't know anything because Jim is over in Costa Rica enjoying retirement. Anybody here work in a data center with a raised floor? Pop off the floor tiles. Look underneath. I found a DR binder in there once. We are looking for absolutely anything that can give us clues on how to rebuild this system, okay? Any information is good information until we prove it wrong. Put all this stuff up on a wall or a whiteboard or anything like that, because this is what we're shooting for. We're trying to figure out all the networking. We're trying to figure out all the hosts. We're trying to build this back together. The problem is, this is what it's going to look like to you. This is what it looks like to everybody else. Right? So, here's another pro tip. If you want anything to get done in business, put it in Excel and then color code it. Magically, things get done. So, we're going to build this kind of matrix on what do we need to do, what systems do we need to do it, and how do we recover the system. And just have it step by step. Make it really easy for people to read, because you don't have time to be given status reports every 20 minutes. You're maybe a team of 3, if you're lucky, right? So we don't have time to keep telling people, yeah, we're still screwed, sorry. So put this up on a TV or a projector or something where people can walk by and go, oh, there's more greens than the reds. Good, we're in good business. Right? So let's talk about how we restore securely. So again, we don't have time for a reinfection. We don't know how long these attackers have been in our network. Maybe they've planted time bombs, right? If they're low and slow, chances are it's a year, 2 years, 3 years. They've already infected all your backup cycles. So if you restore a system, you're restoring the infection. We don't have time for that. So we're going to restore to this quarantine. Now there's one problem with this diagram. Remember how we said all systems are impacted? Chances are, if you're part of this type of situation, they hit your backup systems first. They're recalling all the tapes on your on-site tape library and zeroing those out. So, we're calling back tapes. We need physical tapes now. We're on our offline solutions. There's a lot of active backup recoveries. I say we're geographically dispersed RAID. I don't care whatever fancy technology terms you're using. But essentially, if I corrupt your data in point A, it's also replicated over to point B. And if I have a disk backup that is also still online, that's also going to be overwritten too. Make sure you have an answer. If your backup systems are breached and they start deleting everything, how do you recover this? So now we can talk about the quarantine. So the quarantine system, this is out of band. This is air-gapped. And I really mean air-gapped because, again, we can't risk an infection. Most of the time, you're going to find that the file shares have been infected for your entire backup cycle. You don't have a clean way to restore a file share just from straight backups. You're going to have to get creative. But if we just put that on there, PS exec, WMIC, I don't care how they're doing it, it's going to start infecting your new network. So we really have to let these systems bake a little bit. We got to look for these IOCs, indicators of attack, indicators of compromise. We need to verify these things are clean before we're putting them back in production. So now, we are also not restoring to old production. We are moving to new production because, again, if we are hit by something like this, chances are we don't have that good of a security posture. If you're not patching for 0867, 1710, now 0708, chances are you're still running Cisco on your switches. How do we trust the switches? Because if they're in our environment for this long, chances are they've already installed backdoors on all your switches. So, something really cool happens when you suffer a breach like this. Anybody know what happens to your budget? You get an open checkbook, right? So, I give you guys the open checkbook. What do we want to implement into our new network? Everything. Wonderful. It's going to be hard to do. We got like 24, 48 hours left in our time frame here because the business really wants to come back online. So what are we prioritizing? What do we want to do? Segmented networks. Excellent. This wouldn't be possible if you had proper segmentation. Others? Clean file server, yeah. So, file servers are massive. They're gigantic. Do you know how long it takes to restore one of those from physical tapes? Maybe you don't need all your family pictures stored on corporate. Or maybe you had 13 different Nickelback CDs on your file share. You probably don't need to do that. So if you can prioritize your business critical files to restore, that's great. That goes back to the idea of data classification. What do we really need here, and what's a nice to have? What else we got? Open checkbook. Man, you guys don't like spending money. Better monitoring, or monitoring at all, right? So, again, it would be great to know how these attackers got into our network. We probably don't know. But, so here's another thing. So, you're breached, everything's gone. You start recovering. Anybody have kids here? You ever take a ball away from a kid? What is the only thing that they want back now? So, if you contain the breach, you took away the hacker's ball. That's what they want back, and they will come back. So if we got monitoring and all this other stuff, now we can see, we have telemetry. All right, so you guys are terrible at spending money. This is what I like to spend money on, right? So we need new domain, because at this point, the domain can be assumed compromised. We have no idea who's valid, who's not. Question?
If you already have some devices in place, but you're not sure if they were configured or set up, how would you verify you're not buying the products and basically verify your configuration?
So the question is, we already have all this stuff and it was probably misconfigured, that's how we had the breach. How do we verify the configurations? I'm going to punt that until week 2 or 3 of the recovery. So, because right now, the business is still down. We need to get the system back up, and then we're going to go into a full audit. Basically bring in, again, we got open checkbook. We're going to bring in consultants because we just don't have the time. We need to keep this business running, and we're going to run these audits. There's some great stuff out there on red team automation and stuff. That comes further in the maturity of the organization, but we need to get something. You know, that's what I'm prioritizing in hours 0 to like 150, basically. New authentication, yeah, domain's gone. We need new domain. Network segmentation, somebody mentioned that, wonderful. SIM, logging, anything. We need telemetry when these people come back. I got Apple-ware firewall in there, in a very ambiguous logo, I swear. But this has saved my behind once or twice. We couldn't identify exfiltration. They were tunneling out port 53 over DNS traffic. If you have an Apple-ware firewall, that's going to notice it and it'll block it. IR toolkit. Anybody here able to grab a memory capture remotely? Okay, everybody look at Google Rapid Response. It's a free open source tool. It's basically a rootkit you can install on your clients. You can grab memory captures, you can grab hard drives. You're gonna need a way to quickly get the data on this secondary, tertiary attack. Implement MFA. Most of the attacks that I saw was an OWA password spray. Once they have credentials, they use the VPN connection in because everything is single factor. Put in a multi-factor. Patch, 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 patch. Vulnerability scanner. So let's say that we actually had an okay patching system, but we still had Java installed out there. We still had Adobe. You're not going to really see that in a WSUS or anything like that. Go get a vulnerability scanner. That way you got a list to work off of. Somehow figure out how to proxy your web traffic because they're going to be phishing you. They have all your information. These phish emails are going to look really good now. Email protection, chances are, yeah, maybe an OWA spray, maybe a phish. Figure out something to drop in. Just, again, we're looking for foundational pieces at this point. So, that was fun. So, there's a balance of time and implementation because we're putting this stuff in. It's amazing how fast you can put stuff in without change control. But I'll be honest, we broke a lot of stuff, but it doesn't matter because the business is down. But so how much longer can you keep the business down while you are running around like crazy? Can you perform your critical functions? We need to start pumping money back into this company. And then sleep deprivation is a real thing. How much more can you do before you start making critical mistakes? Pro tip, make sure you define this stuff ahead of time because it's really hard to think about that stuff while you're also trying to figure out the network. Miscellaneous tips, 3-2-1 rule, conferences, everybody know it? Your war room is going to smell terrible. Make sure people are getting showers. Make sure people are cleaning up the food. I put 3 hours of sleep in there. That's a pipe dream, you're not sleeping. Assign a war room manager. Find somebody that can actually manage all the meeting invites, the conference rooms, the note-taking, the food, the caffeine intake, right? You're going to need somebody to think about this stuff. And it can't be you. You need to, heads down, you're recovering the business. Save absolutely everything. You don't know what's going to be discoverable in court, what's going to save you 5 years down the road. USB drives are cheap. Start right into those. And this last part, this is a lesson learned from another poorly configured company. Ensure secure out-of-band communications. If you are breached and you know your email system's breached, don't email the new credentials to your new systems over that same email. Right? If you have corporate phones, assume those are breached. Don't be texting passwords. Get out of band. Okay. So that was awful. I never want to do that again. So we kind of want to talk about how do we move forward from this, because this is the most expensive learning lesson you are ever going to have, so don't waste it. So you start asking yourself questions. Where are we weak? How we prioritize? Any CISPs in here? Gap analysis, this is what we're going to do, right? So we're going to define 3 things. Where are we? Where do we want to be? And how do we get there? Well, we know where we are. We're terrible. We just lived through it. The only stuff we have is the stuff we rebuilt. Where do we want to be? Well, go steal somebody's framework. These people are a lot better at defining this stuff. They do it for their jobs. Go steal somebody's framework. Don't try to make it up your own. It's like rolling your own encryption. Don't do it. Now, has anybody here read one of these frameworks? How many of you fell asleep during it? These documents are awful to read. And another challenge you're going to have is educating your board, your C-levels, your executives on what just happened and why do we care about it. So what you're going to have to do is kind of create your own framework and get it to a point that you can educate these people. They're not technical people. So here's another pro tip. Your board is very good at very little. They know how to make money and they know how to manage risk. That's about it, but they're really good at it. Give it to them in a way that they can consume it. Here's one of the eye charts. There's a link at the bottom. Go steal this. I created this framework for one of the companies, but basically it's NIST 853. And what I did is I made it understandable to the public. So instead of talking about standards and network encryption and all this other stuff, so if we had a standard for every network switch is talking SNMP to a logical server, we just have network operations are baselined. That's something that they can consume, and that's something that they can run with, actually. So again, we'll zoom up. So here's one. Physical devices are inventoried, right? This is like 13 pages in NIST. It's awful. But this is understandable. It's going to relate to your asset management program. IT is most likely the people going to be driving it. And I got this scale, 1 through 5. If you're here for Isaiah's talk, I talked about how I love maturity models. So what we're going to do is we're going to define where we're at in the scale from a scale of 1 to 5. And now notice, this one we want to be at a 3. If you make everything a 5, you are wasting money. Because every dollar we spend here, we can't pump back into the business to make money. So we need to be very strategic on where we want to be. So to define this capability maturity model, again, SysPs, this is boring stuff, but it's really good in getting budget and explaining to others that aren't in the trenches like us. So we're going to go from 1 through 5. 1 is an ad hoc process. This is something that you have to think about every time. Number 2 is repeatable. Ryan can do it every time, and it's the same way. But if I talk to Joe, Joe doesn't know how to do it, right? So he's back down to a 1, I'm at a 2. Okay, fine, we'll call it a 2. We go to 3. There's a defined process. I can hand this off to somebody else with similar skills, and I'll get the same outcome, right? This is where your processes and your procedures and your standards and all that stuff comes from. 4 is managed. This is do we notice exceptions immediately. So we have a baseline, and we see an alteration on that. We know about it, and we can react to it now. And then 5, it's optimize, continual improvement. This is the highest level of optimization, right? So this is, you have some type of machine running your process for you. There's little to no human involvement. It's really expensive, right? So we're going to go through this framework and identify where we're at today, and then where we want to be, or where's good enough, right? In security, perfect is the enemy of good. We don't need to be perfect everywhere, but we need to explain where we want to be at least as a baseline, and then we can start improving from there. So then we start talking about activities. So if we're at 1 in physical asset management, and we want to be at 3, what do we need to do? So we start defining projects. We define programs around this. So this one, it's an asset management program, right? We're going to have a system that's tracking acquisition to deposition for all of our assets, right? We're going to have stickers on the front of our laptops with barcodes so I can scan them. It goes into some system, and we're tracking the assets now. Cool. We just went from a 1 to a 3. And we're going to work through our entire sheet until we have all these different programs. And you're going to notice that we can get 10 or 15 control cards with an asset management program. So you're going to have these different programs that you need to do, right? You got asset management, vulnerability management, IAM. You go down the list. There's a lot of stuff we need to do because we weren't doing security first. So yeah, that's a lot of work. So what do we do first? Well, we can threat model. So there's a lot of different ways to threat model. We can do this data flow. We can do entity relationships. We can talk about the geopolitical relationships in the Middle East. No. Again, we're at ground zero. Let's dumb this down, right? There's bad guys, there's good guys, and there's things we're protecting. So, loss expectancy. Everybody know what loss expectancy is? We are at a casino. You should really know about loss expectancy. So this is how likely are you to lose how much, basically. You multiply them together, you get loss expectancy. So here's a pictorial representation of that. So things on the all the way right are guaranteed to happen. Things on the left are probably not going to happen. You got impact on the y-axis, so up at the top, big impact, down at the bottom, little impact. And what happens is you get this nice little overlay. Top rights are need to mitigate. So these things are most likely going to happen, and it's going to cause you a big impact. Bottom left, don't worry about those. Low impact, low likelihood. Where you get those other 2 quadrants are tough decisions. It's like, yeah, do we have to plan for earthquakes? If we have an earthquake in our data center, we're probably down, right? So, but it might be low impact unless we're on the West Coast. So you got to understand this stuff, but I have another option. I call this bang for buck. So we take our loss expectancy and we put it on ease of implementation. So on the left is very hard stuff to do. On the right is very easy stuff to do. So now we have a very good one. This is no-brainers. This is very easy stuff that's going to mitigate 80% of your problems, right? This is the 80-20 rule that you hear always talked about. Anybody running LAPS, local admin password solution? How easy is it? So for those of you that don't know, local admin password solution is for Microsoft on your endpoints. You have a local admin password that is probably shared across every single device that you have in your environment. So if I'm able to grab that, I have access to every single endpoint on your environment. It's bad news. So Microsoft said, all right, here's a free tool, LAPS. What it does is you push it out. There's a PowerShell script that you run to update your schema, and then there's a GPO to push it out to your clients. That's it. It's 3 steps. It's awesome. But what it does is it hooks into your endpoints and it rotates the local admin password on there at some cadence that you set, 1 hour, 24 hours, 30 days. It's definable. And then to anybody that needs access to that admin password, there's a little GUI that they log into, and you get the computer name and the current admin password for it. Once you use it, you have the option to cycle it, so nobody actually knows your passwords on your endpoints. What do you say? A couple minutes? Hours?
Yeah, about an hour and a half.
There you go, about an hour and a half. That is way up there on the no-brainer scale. Go do labs. Top left, these are big projects. These are things that are very hard to do that will mitigate your biggest problems. You hear about zero trust. You hear about privileged access management. If you're able to pull these things off, they eliminate most of your threats, but they're very hard to do. We're not going to prioritize those over the no-brainers right now. Bottom right are things that really don't have an impact, but we know there's problems with them, and we'll just get back to them, right? Audit remediations on like 2% of your estate, right? These are things, yeah, they're easy to do. We don't have time to do it right now, though, so when we have time, we'll do it. If you're hiring interns, this is intern work, right? Give them the softball projects that actually have an impact, but are really easy to do. Bottom lefts, don't do them. They're really hard to do. I don't have any examples of these, but anything that's really hard to do that doesn't really solve a problem, don't even talk about. Cool. So we know what we need to do. We know what we need to do first. Let's go do it. We know that we're going to need people to do this. Go find some people. We're going to need money. Go find some money. So, again, we talked about the open checkbook. Anybody know how long the open checkbook lasts for? I've seen about 3 to 6 months. And then all of a sudden, everybody forgot about what just happened. They want to spend money on new R&D, and your security program's getting cut again. We need to govern this, and we need to show progress, because otherwise you're going to lose all your momentum. And especially if you did a really good job at recovery. I've heard this said once, well, it only costs us a couple $1 million, and this is the first time it's ever happened in 20 years. If this happens once every 20 years, I'm good with it. It's like, man, we did do a good job of recovering. All right, so we need some governance, and we need some metrics and show that we're actually putting value back into the company. We can't be a cost center. If we become a cost center, what is the only thing that anybody cares about? You guys are quiet. Come on, scream it out. Cutting costs, thank you. Right? So businesses change as well. Environments change. Reprioritize your projects based on changes. And then continue your gap analysis. And you know what happened? You're accidentally a CISO now. Whether you like it or not. So thanks, everyone. I try to keep this talk really short, so we still got 15 minutes, but we're going into lunch. If you guys want to go to lunch right now, feel free to. Otherwise, I will stay here forever because I really like the conversations that spawn off of this. My goal of this talk is not to educate you something on anything new. I got other talks on that where we're dropping new tools or O-days or anything like that. This talk is really meant for you to think about what you would do in this situation. Think about your environment. If you didn't have your backup systems, what happens? If you had a complete compromise, what happens? If your firewalls were compromised and you can't trust your firewall rules, what are you going to do? Right? And just think about that stuff. So everyone, thank you for showing up. And at this time, I'm going to open up the discussion and make it a fireside chat. So thank you.